assigned some trucks going to deliver iron and steel to Karuma Dam. Before that, we were out. But if you look at this seriously, we want to come in as business sector at the formation stage of these projects. If there is going to be a dam, if there is going to be a standard gauge railway, we should sit with the technocrats and agree what are we going to use, what can we supply as here. It's sad to see a Chinese driver driving a truck in northern Uganda. Honestly, we can have drivers. So this local content, I'm glad we've made a movement. I know Kenya here is supplying steel and cement. Uganda, we have started, as I said, but we lost out a lot. Because if I look at the major products, the main bridge in Jinja was built in 1955 when I was born. The next bridge is being built now after 65 years. So the local content, the major projects we are talking about, they come after 100 years. So if our companies don't partake or participate in them, then we lose out completely. I leave out to that. But let me tell you that, for example, I was reading about the London Underground. It changed the story of steel industry in London. Currently, the Chinese steel has killed the prices of world steel. Why? Because China has been undergoing a lot of major projects, so their steel companies expanded so much. Now they have finished the projects, they don't know what to do with the steel, so they can sell it at any price. So I'm talking about the effect, what local content can do in terms of giving you skills, if you participate in terms of giving you expanded, in terms of giving you capacity building. The next one I'll mention a bit as we celebrate 20 years is agriculture. This has a part to do with women and has a part to do with us. All our countries are agriculture based, but our national budgets do not show that when they are supporting agriculture. We need to support agriculture to add value. We've shared this together. I only say it to emphasize it, that the percentage we are putting in agriculture is still minimum, and we need to move it up. Women in business, I said it. So as I conclude and wish you good celebrations, allow me first of all, through the minister from Kenya, to congratulate your government and Mr. Uhuru in particular for talking to Odinga. This has made the business community cool down, and we are happy we can move freely in West and Eastern Uganda. As I conclude also, allow me to congratulate the government through you, Chief Guest, and the government that this last week signed the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which I think is a big story to business community. It's a big story to business community. It will clear what has been outstanding between our conflicts we've had between the multiple regional groupings of SADC, COMESA. When you want to bring your sugar, they say, the sugar is coming from COMESA, then it doesn't pay tax. If we become all Africa, I think it will be moved forward and we can move clear. I want to wish you good celebrations. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The next speaker on the order of speeches will be Ambassador Libert Mfumukeko, the Secretary General of the East African Community. Ambassador.
Right Honorable Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, and representative of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda. Right Honorable Dr. Ali Haji Kirunda Kivejinja, Second Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Eabc Affairs of the Republic of Uganda and Chair of the Eabc Council of Ministers. Honorable Adan Mohamed, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives, representing His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. Honorable Christopher Kizabanga, State Minister for Agriculture, Republic of Uganda. Honorable Peter Munya, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Eabc Affairs and Northern Corridor Development, Kenya. Honorable James Macharia, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, Kenya. Honorable Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Dr. Donald Kaberuka, former President of the African Development Bank. Mr. Jim Kabeho, Chairman of the East African Business Council. Eabc Board of Directors and Members, Permanent and Principal Secretaries. Honorable Matthias Wachter, representing the Federation of German Industries, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and representatives of cooperation missions, colleagues, Deputy Secretary Generals, Deputy Secretaries General, Director General, and EAC staff, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Right Honorable Prime Minister, allow me to welcome you and the participants at this 20th anniversary celebrations since the establishment of the East African Business Council. While we shall be listening to the presentations on the journey that Eabc has trekked over the last 20 years, allow me, participants, in a special way, to take this opportunity to appreciate the presence of the Chair of the EAC Council of Ministers, as well as the support accorded to this event by EAC partner states. I wish to underline that His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta has been a beacon of support and encouragement to the private sector in general and the business community in particular. Just recently, at the Joint Heads of State Retreat on Infrastructure and Health Financing and Development, our heads of state pitched camp for the full inclusion and engagement of the private sector as a capable and indispensable partner in the development of infrastructure and expansion and improvement of health services in the region. For this enduring support, we salute our leadership and trust that it will not only continue but deepen so that the private sector can truly participate in the development of our region. Distinguished participants, I wish to thank the board and management of Eabc for organizing the celebrations to mark its 20th anniversary since its establishment. While I salute the achievements of Eabc against various challenges and constraints, I do truly hope that the institution will use the celebrations to learn from the past challenges so as to establish a new trajectory of its next 20 years, hinged on realizing the dream of an East Africa driven by the private sector as envisioned by the framers of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community. In this path, I commit the support of the Secretariat to Eabc in all feasible ways to realize its dreams. EAC and Eabc have worked very closely over the period, and through this collaboration, both institutions have benefited from the synergies of working together. In this partnership, the institutions have held several collaborative and high-level meetings that contributed towards the conclusion of several regional legislation of such laws as the Customs Union Protocol, the Common Market Protocol, the Monetary Union Protocol, One-Stop Border Post Law, the framework on the elimination of non-tariff barriers to trade, development of trade standards, among others. The partnership has also enabled the joint hosting of various international dignitaries, regional platforms, conferences, meetings such as the EAC Heads of State Entrepreneurship Conferences, the EAC African Higher Education Forum, the Manufacturing Summit, and the EAC Heads of State Business Summit, aimed at widening and deepening the recognition and contributions of the private sector in the region. This comradeship will continue. The Eabc Treaty places private sector development high on the agenda of the community's integration process. It dedicates the 3 articles regarding the involvement and participation of the private sector. These are Articles 127, 128, and 129 of the treaty. And the treaty mandates states to create an enabling environment for the private sector and civil society to take full advantage of the community, as well as for adoption of programs that would strengthen and promote the role of the private sector as an effective force for the development of their respective economies. Thus, in the context of the Eabc, private sector has a key role to play in achieving the aspirations of the community. Pursuant to the implementation of the Eabc Treaty provisions, the Council of Ministers approved a framework for structured dialogue between Eabc, private sector organizations, civil society, and other interest groups. This framework anchored around the Secretary General Forum reports its recommendations to the Council, which in turn commits such recommendations to the respective sectoral councils for technical consideration before final recommendations are adopted by the Council for implementation. Distinguished participants, the 5th Eabc Development Strategy, covering 5 years to 2022, which was recently launched by the Eabc Summit, postulates among its priority areas to include improving regional and global competitiveness for faster and sustainable economic growth and move closer to the status of the newly industrialized region, while establishing a robust legal and administrative framework that facilitates regional economy to generate income and wealth. This means that the private sector interests are at the forefront of the Eabc strategic plan. The strategy also identifies critical private sector constraints to be addressed, and which include limited supply capacity to take advantage of the available regional preferential market access and underdeveloped regional infrastructure. Towards the implementation of the 5th Development Strategy, the management of the Eabc and Eabc Board have agreed in November 2017 on the establishment of 2 committees: a steering committee comprised of technical staff from Eabc and EAC, and an executive committee comprised of EAC executives, the chairperson and vice chair of the Eabc board, to champion few priorities that are critical to inter-regional trade and investment in the region and private sector development. The key priorities will include setting up an online buyer-seller portal, training and capacity building for SMEs, technology transfer, investment promotion, EAC branding, and establishing an EAC investment aftercare desk, among others. In order to realize the foregoing priorities, a number of activities have been undertaken by EAC to establish collaborations between the EAC business community and world-class technology innovators and investment communities, and EAC is in the process of strengthening its industry, investment, and private sector development departments so as to be able to assist properly the private sector of this region. Distinguished participants, as I conclude, let me once again extend my sincere gratitude to the EAC heads of state for their steadfast support to the private sector, and the East African Business Council Board of Directors and Management for their resilience and commitment in championing the cause of the private sector and businesses in the region. I also wish to reiterate the commitment of EAC Secretariat and partner states towards providing an investment-conducive environment and a private sector-led integration process as part of its quest to the establishment of a free market system which is integrated in the global economy, thus building a better future for EAC citizens. I thank you for your attention and wish the anniversary celebrations great success. Asante sana.
The speakers who have spoken before me have already dealt on the key achievements of integration that we have been able to have for the period we have been there, and I really don't want to go into that. The common market is operational with the challenges. The customs union has been able to improve to the level now we have a single customs territory where you can be able to clear your goods at a single entry point, and the processes and the procedures have been simplified to make a trade easier, and that has been a milestone. We've been able to achieve a single network. I think this is a significant development. A single network for at least 3 countries where now calling has come down. People in East Africa can be able to talk, communicate without the expenses, and we are looking forward to other countries that are not within that arrangement to come into board. And we've already, Tanzania, the Republic of Tanzania has given a December deadline to be able to come on board, and I believe Burundi and South Sudan will also come on board soon. And many other achievements, infrastructural development, which are already coordinating properly and making sure, pipelines and railways are being put in. Therefore, in a nutshell, we have made a lot of progress, even though there are so many other challenges on this very journey. And this is never an easy journey. I think this is what we need to be acknowledging. Now, moving forward then, as a ministry and as a region, what are we looking into? And I would want to point out, and this is an issue again, point out by the chairman and even the executive secretary, the challenge of failure to implement decisions that have been made over the years. We keep making decisions, but the implementation is still quite a challenge. And therefore, one of our key, which we want to assure you as a member of the Council of Ministers and the stakeholders who are involved in making sure integration moves forward, is that you make sure that we do proper follow-up and make sure there is proper full implementation of decisions that have been made. And one of the key challenges that makes it very difficult for decisions to be implemented is that decisions are made, but the laws, especially in partner states, still remain the same. So that you have a decision here at the top, but the laws that are governing those sectors within the partner states remain the same. So then how do you move forward? So our key agenda, and I'm sure if you have looked at the work of the Council of Ministers, now you see harmonization of laws in areas that have been agreed upon. And in fact, most areas have been agreed upon, in areas that have been upon, to make sure that laws are harmonized, so that what obtains in Uganda, what obtains in Rwanda and in Kenya is the same in all those sectors that have been agreed upon. This may sound easy, but it's not that easy also. Because what it means is, again, you have to push the partner states to an overarching law that will deal with those challenges that we've been talking about can also be done. The other key area of course, that has been alluded to that we are going to focus on, of course, is a review of the CET and the making of the operations of the single custom territory work better. It is already working, but there are still many bottlenecks that, again, in the trade. And again, still, this is closely linked with the fact that individual partner states are the ones still doing clearing and approvals at the points of entry. So we need to make a decision of moving forward in terms of coming up with an institution that is East African-wide, that is able to handle these issues. Again, this is a decision that needs to be arrived at by the partner states for us to be able to move forward. The other issues, of course, that already we've been able to agree moving forward, and we've been directed by the summit to look at them, is the issue of the federation. Decision has already been made to come up with a committee of experts to draft a constitution for a confederation of East Africa. And I think that is a milestone, having the summit make that decision and asking the Council Minister to move forward in this agenda. It is a good step. It is a proper step towards the realization of that dream. And the other critical issue, agenda that is we are properly seized off, that also have been alluded to by the other speakers, is the challenge of industrialization in East Africa. We still continue to become a net importer. Therefore, even though we keep talking about our market, we need to see this market, what is the stake, our own stake within the market. And this is the agenda of industrialization that is, we are talking about, all of us are talking about. In Kenya, already the target is to make industry take 15% of the GDP. And this is where now the private sector comes in and government comes in to work together to the realization of this critical agenda. And within this agenda, certain industries have been singled out by the East African industrialization policy to make sure that those particular industries are targeted and grown and protected so that we can move forward. And specifically the industry of dealing with apparels, the car assembly, a local car assembly industry that has been struggling because of the issues of the interpretation of rules of origin and all that. Those are some of the critical areas we want to look into, even as we look into the improvement and the deepening of the general common market by addressing some of the other issues that were raised here. For instance, the issue raised by the chairman. Why should it continue the situation where traveling within East Africa is so expensive, it is easier to travel far and wide? And yet we are saying we are committed to a market. We want to bring prosperity in East Africa by, making it easier for people to travel and do business. Yet we continue being too protectionist about our own small domestic markets that we have within our region that don't make a big difference. Yet experience is telling us whenever we open up, we grow a bigger cake that we are able to share, that we are able to even get more benefits. Where we have opened up, we have not lost, we have only gained. So these are the challenges that we want to grapple with as we go along, and therefore we are very, very happy and pleased to know that the private sector is walking this journey with us. And I want, therefore, in conclusion, congratulate you for celebrating your 20th anniversary and for the partnership you have been having with the public sector in walking this journey of integration. Thank you and God bless you.
Next to make his remarks is Honorable Aden Mohammed, who is the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives. Honorable Aden Mohammed.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Rugunda, fellow ministers who are here, the SG for Eabc, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I bring apologies from His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is out of town on another business function. But he has said that this is really an important occasion, and I bring his regards to everybody. I will just want to make three broad remarks about the importance of why we are here today. The first one is really just talk about the role of governments, especially our EAC member states. Then briefly talk about the role of private sector in linking that to the Eabc and its roles and what we have achieved so far. And then finally, just make some remarks around the road ahead and what this means for us. I guess my colleague, Honorable Munya, has outlined some of the things that we have done as governments in the EAC member states to make it easy for businesses to thrive, for us to try and remove as many bottlenecks as possible in facilitating trade and investment within this region. We have had our fair share of success, and we've also had some shortcomings, and a lot more needs to be done as we drive forward, especially in areas of investments in infrastructure, in driving policies that are coherent and consistent in order to facilitate trade in our region through member states, private sector bodies, and of course through East African Business Council, which is the umbrella body. Now, the private sector itself have significant role to play in furthering our objectives of our economic growth. Eabc has, over the last 20 years, done a lot of great things, and there are a lot of great things ahead that I think needs to be done. The respective member states' private sector bodies, and I see Carol here from KEPSA, and the equivalent of KEPSA in all the member states, all have significant roles to play. And I would like to congratulate our private sector bodies for the contributions that we have all been able to make in our respective member states' economic development agenda. But that is the past. I think the journey ahead looks more interesting, but more challenging as we see things that are happening around us. Whilst private sectors have contributed a lot in driving positive energy for us, in driving our economic programs, I would say the private sector have also played an equally significant role in contributing to some of the challenges that we face in East African community. What do I mean by that? Whenever we have opportunities and conferences like this, one of the biggest things that we do as governments is when I go back to my office, I get a member of the private sector from here who would say, well, that thing we agreed in that conference as EAC, I think it doesn't work for us, so you need to say no to that. And most of the time, ministers, have to reflect, and because we serve the interest of our member states, would be obliged to actually start dragging their feet. And a lot of the non-tariff barriers that we see today, I must confess, is a creation of our private sector bodies who oftentimes try to protect their business interests as opposed to looking at the bigger integration agenda that we have. So my appeal to the private sector, is if you agree as Eabc that this is the road to go for this sector, please don't confuse us by coming to our respective offices to say, yes, we have agreed that in public, but privately, I think just so you know, this is hapa iko shida. And that is really what is manifesting itself around borders, where people are getting frustrated. And we are making progress, I must confess. We are moving in the right direction. But the few teething problems that we see in NTBs that are happening are our creation. We need to find a way of resolving that. My final remark is just to really just talk about some of the emerging themes and developments that are happening. EAC is probably one of the most integrated from a trade point of view, from infrastructure point of view, than many of the other regional economic bodies within the continent of Africa. And that, I think, to a large extent is congratulation to the East African community team represented here by SG, and a lot has been done in the last few years to drive that integration agenda, both politically as well as through the private sector bodies. But what I think is happening is a mix of significant opportunities that is coming our way, especially through the recently signed Africa Continental Free Trade Area that I'm sure will be talked about briefly later on. Also, those opportunities are mixed with the threats and the challenges that we are seeing happening all over the world. I think the days of free trade being embraced by everybody in the world seems to be coming under threat, and more than ever before, we need to stick together as EAC because our advantage is in the strength of our numbers that we have. And if we go out with consistent policies, working together as 150 million East African member states through the creation of that one market, one voice, we stand a better chance in competing in this world, which I think has got a lot of mixed signals, both positive as well as negative. But I want to say congratulations to Eabc for the last 20 years' achievements. Let's look now forward to make bigger impact in our business community and as well as our countries as we look forward. So those many remarks. Thank you very much and happy birthday. Thank you.
It's now my honor to invite the Right Honorable Kirunda Kivejinja, the second Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda and Chair of the East African Council of Ministers, to say his few remarks and then to invite our chief guest, the Right Honorable Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, to make his remarks. Thank you.
Right Honorable Prime Minister of Uganda, who is here also representing the chairman of the East African Summit. He was invited, as he will tell you, and he had made all arrangements to come, but because of a number of things, he sent no other person than the Prime Minister. Now, for me, I'm just having a few remarks, and that's why I'm not carrying a written text. One is that for diplomats, they know the greatest achievement is to pull